Pay close attention. The news you're about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Well, President Trump, we're going to look at some of his plans with Venezuela. We know that the United States went in and they kidnapped Maduro and his wife, brought him to the United States. But what are the plans with the oil? That's really the big topic. We're going to talk a little bit about Iran's threats to the United States and something called the Board of Peace and their plans for the world. That's going to be in today's broadcast. But first, when you think of oil reserves and who has the largest, some countries like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, or even Iran might come to mind. But the fact is that the country with the largest oil reserve in the world sits in the United States' own backyard, Venezuela. That's right. 303 billion barrels, nearly 40 billion barrels more than its next closest oil producer, Saudi Arabia. And the U.S. just claimed dominion over it. Well, let's take a look at this next video for the United States plans for Venezuelan oil.
The center of this U.S. strategy in Venezuela is oil. The country holds the world's largest reserves, and President Trump just announced that the country will be turning over millions and millions of barrels to the United States at market price. That coming after NBC News learned that the U.S. Energy Secretary is in close contact with oil executives, including Chevron, about rebuilding Venezuela's infrastructure.
You cannot continue to have the largest oil reserves in the world under the control of adversaries of the Western Hemisphere, while the people of Venezuela have no electricity, substandard quality of life, and its profits don't benefit the people of Venezuela. The profits are stolen by a handful of oligarchs around the world.
Well, emphasizing the president prioritizing Venezuelan oil, late tonight he posted that the interim government there, the government of Delcy Rodriguez, will be turning over, as he says, 30 to 50 million barrels of sanctioned oil to the U.S., which the president says will be sold here at its market price. He said it'll be taken by storage ships and brought directly to docks in the U.S. He adds that the money will be controlled by, in his words, me, to ensure that it's used to benefit the people of both Venezuela and the U.S. To give you a broad sense here, the U.S. produces roughly 13 million barrels a day. So the number he's talking about is roughly 3 or 4 days worth of oil. Clearly, this is going to raise questions about the future of the relationship between the U.S. and Venezuela. The president has said getting access to Venezuela's oil supply and rebuilding its infrastructure there, Gotti, is a priority even before holding elections. In his interview with NBC News this week, he suggested American oil companies would be reimbursed for the money that they spend there. We should note that we have now learned that the Energy Secretary, Chris Wright, is scheduled to meet with oil executives in Miami. That's supposed to happen tomorrow. Gotti.
And Katana, as you heard there, even though that they're going to have 30 to 50 million barrels of oil, it's really only 3 to 4 days of what the United States can produce. But importantly, as they mentioned, President Trump saying that one of their main priorities going into Venezuela was the oil.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Well, since Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife's capture and deportation to the United States to be charged, the Venezuelan vice president has made demands for Maduro's return. Now, the couple is facing charges of narco-terrorism, cocaine importation, but Maduro was taken to a detention center by the U.S. DEA agents to await trial.
That's right. President Trump said that the United States will govern Venezuela for now, but that move has a lot of people divided. Of course, even within the rank of the Trump administration, as well as, of course, legislators in the United States Senate and the Congress. Well, many Americans are uncertain as to what they think about this move by President Trump, as they weren't even aware of the extraction made by the United States to remove Maduro, as it occurred while most of the people in the United States were pretty much focused on the holiday season. But now keep in mind, President Trump's promise when he was seeking re-election was an America First policy. So it would appear that this move is a part of him fulfilling that promise.
Well, so what is the U.S. planning to do with access to all those oil reserves? Well, take a look at this video, this interview, as a reporter asked that very question in a press conference, and President Trump doesn't mince his words at all when he gives his response. Take a look.
Speaking of Venezuela, oil, what are we going to do with the oil that we have?
Going to do with what?
The oil that has been seized. The United States seized 1.9 million barrels of oil on December 10th.
We're going to keep it. We're keeping it.
Where's it? Are we going to sell it or put it in the strategic?
Maybe we'll sell it. Maybe we'll keep it. Maybe we'll use it in the strategic reserves. We're keeping it. We're keeping the ships also.
Well, that's definitely always been one of the main priorities of the United States when dealing with other countries, and that's what a lot of other countries have said, is their focus being on the oil, and they've already pretty much made plans with the oil that they've confiscated that came out of Venezuela.
Right, and there was no hesitation whatsoever in President Trump's response. We're keeping it, like no questions asked.
We're keeping it or selling it or doing something, but it's going to get used.
Right.
Well, in a recent interview on TV7, the topic was the United States strike on Syria. Well, let's hear what, there was a couple of interviewees that were on this particular broadcast, but let's hear what some of them had to say about why the U.S. had anything to do with Syria and staying in that area. Let's take a look.
But how can one accept at face value American promises and commitments when the time comes, they do whatever their interests tell them to do at that moment?
With that being said, Mr. Olin, I will point out that it was a two-way street. This was an American interest to defeat the Islamic State. It brought about a very important multilateral coalition. Operation Inherent Resolve was launched to the defeat of the Islamic State, and there were minorities and also Bedouin tribes who were under direct threat. And those tribes and minorities, including the Kurds, which may be referred to as a minority, but there are roughly 35 million Kurds throughout the region. They accepted America's support to fight the enemies that they were fighting anyways. So again, it's a two-way street. And of course, you cannot only blame America in this context, because as we keep saying, when it comes to geostrategic thinking, it's about overlapping interests.
Wasn't it also the oil in Raqqa and Deir Azur provinces?
Causality. General Kimmett?
No, more than causality.
Well, sure. More than causality, I accept that correction. Go ahead.
President Trump was prepared to pull completely out of Syria when he took over. And the fact remains, the only way he was persuaded to stay in was to protect the oil. That wasn't causality. That was the direct cause.
Right.
Again, that says it right there again, pretty much. He said President Donald Trump was prepared to move out, but then the issue or the topic came up about the oil, so they stayed in the region.
Right, and a lot of analysts have said that look, it has to do with the oil, but that's pretty plain right there, that certain countries, especially the United States, centers around those oil-rich countries.
That's right.
Well, tensions between protesters and law enforcement in Iran have been high for weeks. Now, those tensions, although for a different reason, have ramped up yet once again between Iran and the U.S. Now, in the latest round of warnings, Iran has told the United States that it is ready for a war and full retaliation and overwhelming force if the country is attacked again. Now, this was a message presented by Iran's Abbas Araghchi in the Wall Street Journal. Now, he also said Iran would no longer exercise restraint and that its armed forces are ready to strike back if attacked again.
Well, Araghchi said those words are a reality, not a threat. Well, this warning came amidst not only the ongoing protests within the country, but as the United States increases its military presence around the region. A U.S. aircraft carrier group, including the USS Abraham Lincoln, has been moving west toward the region, along with ships, of course. U.S. fighter jets and missile systems have also been moving closer to the area, signifying a potential rise in tensions.
Well, an Iranian Kurdish armed group claimed that Iran carried out a drone missile strike on one of its bases near Erbil, killing one of its fighters, according to the militant group. Now, Iran officials have not acknowledged the attack, but meanwhile in the United States, President Trump has said that he's given firm instructions that Iran will face total destruction if any assassination threats are carried out against him.
Right, and of course he said that while he was at the World Economic Forum, and he of course issued this strong warning that they'll basically get blown up if they would carry out any assassination attempts on the American president. Again, President Trump not mincing any words when it comes to business. Now, additionally, he said the killing of protesters or mass executions in Tehran would cross red lines with Washington, D.C. Now, in an interview with New Nation, Katie Pavik tonight, the president says, again, he's given firm instructions saying that, quote, if anything happens, they're going to wipe them off the face of the earth, end quote.
Well, meanwhile, in Iran, as we mentioned, there is a nationwide protest taking place which Iran has been trying to extinguish. The Iranian state television released its first count of the death toll being at over 3,000 protesters on over several weeks of chaos. But human rights groups are saying the number of people killed is much higher. Now, the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, blames the unrest on foreign interferences, which includes the United States. Now, with all this taking place, a situation could come to a dangerous standoff.
Well, President Donald Trump is well known for his big ideas in taking on unheard of projects like building and fortifying a wall between the United States and Mexico. So, what's next? Well, Donald Trump envisions a new international organization and introduces it to the world as the Board of Peace. But some United States allies are not jumping on the bandwagon. Let's take a look at this next video to see why.
Donald Trump gathered world leaders in Davos today. This was for a signing ceremony for his latest project. It's called the Board of Peace. That's what he calls it. It is supposed to help rebuild Gaza after years of war. 19 countries have put their names on a charter. This charter formalizes the role of the board, but America's closest allies were missing from the ceremony. In fact, it would have been surprising had they attended, because just a day earlier, Trump had mocked all of them. He delivered a speech at the World Economic Forum and insulted and ridiculed countries and their leaders. Our next report has more.
Once this board is completely formed, we can do pretty much whatever we want to do.
A new global body has been launched in Switzerland today. Not at the United Nations in Geneva, but at the World Economic Forum in Davos. There, U.S. President Donald Trump has unveiled what he calls the Board of Peace. A grand name for an ambitious project. It has started with Gaza. Trump says the board is designed to support the ceasefire there and to oversee the territory's reconstruction. To support this, he has invited several countries to join the board. That list includes allies and partners like India, but Trump says this is only the beginning. He says the Board of Peace could expand beyond Gaza and will work alongside the UN.
I think we can spread out to other things as we succeed with Gaza. We're going to be very successful in Gaza, and we can do other things. We can do numerous other things.
Trump launched the board with a public signing ceremony. He chaired it himself. Leaders and senior officials from 19 countries signed the founding charter with him. Some came as close political partners. Others joined as regional players with a direct stake in Gaza's future.
President Trump, the charter is now in full force, and the Board of Peace is now an official international organization.
But the ceremony also revealed who wasn't there. Major U.S. allies were conspicuously absent, and Trump's Davos speech a day earlier may explain why. In that address, he mocked allies and partners across the room. He first criticized Denmark while talking about his ambition of acquiring Greenland.
After the war, we gave Greenland back to Denmark. How stupid were we to do that? But we did it. But we gave it back. But how ungrateful are they now?
Then he mocked French President Emmanuel Macron. He mentioned the sunglasses Macron wore during his own Davos speech.
So when I called up Emmanuel Macron, I watched him yesterday with those beautiful sunglasses. What the hell happened? But I watched him sort of be tough.
Trump also singled out Canada. He said it benefited from the United States and that it should show more gratitude.
Canada gets a lot of freebies from us, by the way. They should be grateful also, but they're not. I watched your prime minister yesterday. He wasn't so grateful. But they should be grateful to us.
He even targeted Switzerland, the host country, during his remarks, saying it was only good because of the United States. But perhaps his sharpest criticism was reserved for the war in Ukraine. Addressing the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, Trump told the Davos audience that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin would be stupid if they did not agree to a peace deal.
I believe they're at a point now where they can come together and get a deal done. And if they don't, they're stupid. That goes for both of them. And I know they're not stupid, but if they don't get this done, they are stupid. So I don't want to insult anyone, but you got to get this deal done.
So here's the paradox. Trump arrived in Davos with two messages: a new peace board on one hand and public jabs at allies on the other. He wants countries inside his new club, but he also used the Davos stage to ridicule the very allies he's courting.
Well, Katana, pretty interesting, creation there by President Trump, coming up with a board of peace. And of course, he's wanting, I think he extended that invitation to like 50 different countries. Only 35 came, but you can kind of see on how his comments are publicly humiliating some of the people that he's asking to join. Yeah. So he's wanting the supporters, but then humiliating them on the other hand.
Yeah. The old saying, you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And a lot of people, they just don't know what to make of those types of statements.
Well, so what is Trump's goal for this new international board? Well, the president has admitted it could possibly replace the United Nations, because even though they have potential, President Trump has been disappointed that they have not done more to change events taking place in the world. In fact, he didn't even consider looking to them for help in working out conflicts. Now, to learn more about this Board of Peace and who's running it, please watch this next video.
For our next story, I want you to imagine geopolitics as a board game. What do you do when you have a board game? You invite friends. You play by the rules mostly, but then one friend loses or doesn't like the game, so he gets a new one, a board game that works according to his rules. That is Donald Trump right now. He has spent years calling the United Nations useless, and now he's trying to build an alternative. He calls it the Board of Peace.
Do you want your Board of Peace to replace the UN?
Well, it might. I mean, the UN just hasn't been very helpful. I'm a big fan of the UN potential, but it has never lived up to its potential. The UN should have settled every one of the wars that I settled. I never went to them. I never even thought to go to them.
they should be able to settle those wars. They don't. I believe you got to let the UN continue because the potential is so great.
So what is this Board of Peace about? The original idea was to oversee the rebuilding of Gaza, or so we thought, but then the world saw the fine print and they figured that this was not just about Gaza. It was not just about one region. This Board of Peace was about global conflicts everywhere in the world, basically wherever Trump decides the board should look. And here's the first big twist. This board has a chairman. Guess who? Donald J. Trump. Already you can see where this is going. On paper, it sounds noble: stability, lawful governance, enduring peace, the kind of words you'd expect in an international charter. But then you see the power structure. Trump chairs the board. Trump controls it. He gets exclusive authority to create new bodies, to change them, and to scrap them if he does not like. What about replacing him? Well, that can only happen if he resigns or he becomes incapacitated. So this is less like the UN General Assembly and more like Trump's War and Peace room. And here's where the board game analogy really kicks in. If you want a seat at the table, you have to be invited by the US president. Your membership technically lasts for 3 years, unless, of course, you choose to pay. If you pay more than $1 billion in cash, you get lifetime membership. That's right. It's peace, but make it premium. Although the White House says the money is voluntary, they've invited about 50 leaders to join. And guess what? 35 have already said yes. Tells you a lot about our world, doesn't it? Anyway, the guest list is eclectic. You have America's close allies, or whatever is left of them. You have strongmen. You have democracies and autocracies, all in the same room. Israel, the UAE, Bahrain, Belarus, and Hungary are among those who have said yes. Russia and Ukraine have both been invited. So what if they're fighting a war? They can join Trump's Board of Peace. If you buy oil from Putin, Trump will sanction you, but he himself will invite Putin to his club. Hypocrisy does not even cover it anymore. India, too, has been invited to join. So has Pakistan. Some countries have refused to join, like Norway and France.
In response to President Macron saying he will not join the Board of Peace?
Oh, did he say that? Well, nobody wants him because he's going to be out of office very soon. So, that's all right. What I'll do is, if they feel like Costco, I'll put a 200% tariff on his wines and champagnes, and he'll join. But he doesn't have to join. If he said that, you're probably giving it to me a little bit differently. But if he actually did say that, but as you know, he's going to be out of office in a few months.
Yeah, well, of course, President Trump is going to be the head of it, and he has pretty much an indefinite tenureship there. But, a lot of people are probably wondering, well, exactly how much power and authority would an organization like this have? And, seeing that Trump's at the helm, is he going to just be able to go in and take over other countries and just call it in the name of peace?
Right. And, he said in the first video we watched that, he basically created this because of the situation in Gaza, wanting to make sure the ceasefire held, but then also to help with the reconstruction. And remember, President Trump has very big plans about the reconstruction in Gaza. So, but that from there kind of springboarded into the other conflicts like Ukraine and Russia, and actually saying that, these leaders would be stupid if they wouldn't, come to some sort of peace deal. So he's really wanting this to be a big deal for pushing peace.
Right.
Well, on social media, President Trump is also blasting NATO, saying Russia and China have zero fear of NATO without the United States. And I doubt NATO would be there for us if we really needed them. Now, everyone is lucky, he said, that I rebuilt our military in my first term and continue to do so.
That's right. And Trump goes on in his post to say, quote, "We will always be there for NATO, even if they won't be there for us. The only nation that China and Russia fear and respect is the DJT, rebuilt USA, Make America Great Again." Well, this is an obvious response to some criticism about the United States possibly using force to take over Greenland.
Well, on another note, Pete Hegseth, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, posted on X, quote, the United States continues to enforce the blockade against all dark fleet vessels illegally transporting Venezuela oil to finance illicit activity, stealing from the Venezuelan people. Only legitimate and lawful energy commerce, as determined by the U.S., will be permitted. Now, end quote. Now, this, as reports are coming in on multiple media platforms, that the United States has seized another oil tanker in the North Atlantic Ocean, which looks to be reflagged as a Russian vessel.
Well, the White House has not confirmed these reports, but when President Trump was asked about the first tanker that was seized on December 10th near Venezuela and what would be done with that oil, he said this, or he had this, say, he said, we're keeping it. Maybe we'll sell it, maybe we'll keep it, maybe we'll use it in the strategic reserves. But we're keeping it, we're keeping the ships also.
Yeah, and Katan, many people are just screaming hypocrisy because, you know, the United States is out here saying, look, if you're transporting this Venezuelan oil and you're not giving it to the people, we're taking it, we're seizing it. And they're saying that they're blaming these other countries for doing that. But here you have the United States, some of the very high officials saying, look, we're going to keep the ships, as President Trump said, you know, we're going to basically take over your land, take over your minerals, take over your oil. And that seems perfectly okay. And that's why people are just saying, look, the United States is saying other people are stealing, but what are they doing?
Right. And how are the Venezuelan people benefiting from the United States taking use of this oil for themselves or however they're going to distribute it? Well, you know, that is yet to be determined because the United States is also making plans with some of these big oil companies to kind of start setting up back in that region to start pumping and exporting oil once again.
Well, if you'd like to find out more about these stories and the real opportunity and way to have peace, contact the House of Yahweh. And once again, don't forget to request your free copy of the monthly newsletter and Prophetic Word magazine. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. You can visit them by going to any of their websites. You can go to yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, or Yahweh'sBranch.com. You can also visit our website by going to YPNnews.com. You can email the House of Yahweh at info@yahweh.com. And for all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen. And don't forget the Yisrael Says and Ask Yisrael program. You can find those by going to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next is another classic sermon from Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thank you for watching.